So move now to our high school competition, and that is the Christopher Columbus essay contest. And that's of a different piece there, because their topic wasn't the War of 1812. Their topic has always been, thanks to the American Italians, a focus on what we can learn from the life of Christopher Columbus. And the topic changes a little bit every year, but the focus is on Christopher Columbus. And this year, they had to do a lot of critical thinking as they examined Christopher Columbus in detail and then said, what did the historians of the 15th century, 16th century, and 19th century think of Christopher Columbus? What can we learn in the 20th century, in the 21st century? So with that in mind, we have Cassie Moreno from Kennebunk High School, sponsored by Rebecca Emory Chapter. Cassie, would you come forward?
In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. I can vividly remember learning this rhyme in my 3rd grade classroom, and perhaps that is why it has stayed with me all these years. As children, we learn, often incorrectly, that Christopher Columbus was a great explorer, and that he alone discovered America. We also learn that he is someone to celebrate, someone who deserves his own personal holiday, someone who is by no means a murderer. It was only when I arrived in high school that I learned many adults today view Columbus as just that, someone whose name should go down in history as a thief and a criminal, someone whose day should be renamed Indigenous Peoples Day. The fact is, just as I learned to change my own views of Columbus over the years, so too has society's view of Columbus changed with the passing of time. While Christopher Columbus was considered very noble for his daring discovery in his own time, it was not until the 19th century that he truly received widespread credit for his work, while modern times have provided a view of Columbus as that of a person who murdered for personal gain and profit. Let me take you back to Italy in the 1400s, the Renaissance. It is the time and place of greats like Da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Donatello. In 1451, a family of woolcombers in Genoa gave birth to a son who would grow up to be seen in his own time as an honorary Spanish noble. In the 15th century, Columbus was at first viewed as an adventurer and a risk-taker for his daring ideas and sea voyages. Contrary to popular belief, Columbus had already taken numerous sea voyages before his journey to the New World. In fact, Columbus exhibited all the fundamentals of the Renaissance and the Age of Humanism in his willingness to learn and his desire to find out the truth for himself. He, like many explorers of his age, was also admired for what appeared to be his religious motives to explore, as well as his apparent desire to save souls in the New World. Although his voyage would most likely be dangerous, it was the possibility of gaining riches in the East that eventually convinced the Spanish king and queen, as well as their board of advisors, to patronize Columbus. His plans were rejected by numerous monarchs before being accepted, including John II of Portugal and Henry VIII of England, further proving the fact that before arriving in the New World, he was seen as a radical explorer at home. Upon returning to Spain, Columbus was celebrated in his own time. He was received with the highest honors of the court and admitted as a noble. He became a model explorer of the time, and his explorations led to other Spanish discoveries. In the 19th century, the United States of America found a hero in Columbus, and it was during this century that he reached his highest level of appreciation. While the English had long held John Cabot high above other explorers of the age, it was during this period that Cabot's name was tossed aside in favor of Columbus's. After the Revolution, Columbus's name was given to state capitals, such as Ohio and South Carolinas, as well as to the capital of the nation itself. In fact, Columbus was so important to the Americans that his name was attributed to buildings, streets, and towns all over the young nation. Clearly, he had become a hero of sorts, for it was widely known fact that Columbus had discovered the land which was to become the greatest nation the world had ever seen. It was this sense of American exceptionalism that allowed Columbus's legacy to be carried on so energetically throughout the century. In 1866, there was an attempt to make him a saint of the Catholic Church, and although this attempt was defeated, it seemed that no one needed the blessing of the Church to place Columbus on a pedestal. In 1892, the 400th anniversary of his voyage was celebrated in America with festivities, including the Columbian Exchange in Chicago. Clearly, it was the unfortunate fact that the legacy of Columbus had nowhere to go from there but down. Today, although young children are taught to celebrate Columbus, it is the emerging belief that Columbus does not deserve the praise that we give him. Students of higher level history courses are taught today that Columbus was in fact committing genocide when he attempted to destroy the Native American race. It is more widely known today that although Columbus did not in fact discover the New World, he returned the following year with enough armed forces to destroy it. He instituted the policy of encomiendas, the practice of keeping Native Americans as slaves in return for Christianizing them. Columbus and his men brought harmful diseases to the natives as well, diseases that often killed them long before the Spanish swords could ever reach them. It is also quite possible that he and his men murdered more than 10,000 natives when those individuals could not meet their monthly payment of gold to the Spaniards. Columbus's actions reduced the native populations at the time by over 50%, and yet this is the man we celebrate every October? Society's views on Columbus today are not as clear-cut as they were in the 19th century, or even in the 15th century. For many, Columbus is still a god, and for others, his name is one of shame around the Western world. The fact is that today, there's so much information readily available, so much more than there was in previous centuries, that if you don't have an opinion on Columbus, you can Google one. The result of this is that society will no longer have one single view on anything. There will always be discussion, there will always be debate. But the emerging trend of regarding Columbus as a criminal is one that is gaining ground, and one that is quite distinct from the historical legacy left by Columbus in other centuries. As the belief that he was indeed a murderer and someone concerned with only self-interest continues to grow, there are many scholars who would be in favor of changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. It sounds nice, but it doesn't have the same ring to it, does it? No matter how much our modern society would like to forget about Columbus, it is only for this reason that his name remains infamous. By attempting to celebrate the natives of America, we are still destined to always bring up this explorer's name, no matter what we call our day off from school. And that is the way history would like it, I think. Who knows, maybe in another 300 years, Columbus will be thought of as something completely different. Only time will tell. But for one man to make such impressions on every posthumous age of history, and such distinct ones at that, is an accomplishment like no other. And maybe that is the reason to leave the holiday as it is and celebrate Columbus Day.
Yay, Cassie!
Critical thinking that had to factor in that examination. You know, it doesn't take away from the remarkable things that Christopher Columbus did, but it does give balance so that we see some of this other side too. And we all learn from history. If we don't, what is the byword? We're going to repeat it. So, you have a check here, you have 2 certificates, you don't have a medal because those Italian Americans just don't
Is she really? She have to write a letter.